First, the concepts of participatory economics, which is also called PARICON. I'll refer to it that way, I'm sure, often, so you should know what that stands for. Participatory economics is really just an economic model, an alternative to capitalism. Everybody here okay? Yeah? Yeah. So by an economic alternative, we mean an institutional picture of the key features of the economy. And why do we bother having an economic vision? That's a serious question, because a lot of people think we shouldn't. I think we need it for orientation. I think we need it for morale, to overcome the idea of Tina, to inform our strategy. It's hard to get someplace you want to go if you don't know where you want to go, and for other reasons which we won't go into for want of time. Now, in thinking about vision, the first concept, I suppose, is the idea of a minimalist vision. By that I mean that it's inappropriate for us to try and create a blueprint of a future economy. Why is it inappropriate? Well, one, we don't know enough. There's no way that we know enough to detail a future economy. And the second reason, which is far more important, is because it's not our place to do that. Most of a future economy is to be determined by future people who inhabit the economy. I'm often asked all sorts of questions like, how long will people work? What kind of clothes will people wear to work? Okay, that's a little more extreme than I'm usually asked. But very, very detailed questions about the character of a future economy. And even if we could say those things with some confidence, which we can't, it would be wrong to do so, because those are issues that should be decided by future people, not by us. It's not our place to decide for future people how they're going to choose to live, how they're going to have their economy. But the second concept is a maximalist vision of the economy. And so even though it's minimalist in the sense I just described, in another sense it is maximalist. And that sense is that we want future people to be able to decide their own economic life. And so we want nothing less than to conceive of and then fight for and implement institutional structures which allow that. That is to say, we want true classlessness. We want a desirable economy. So we want the defining features that are necessary and sufficient for that, although we don't want anything more than that. So it's minimalist, maximalist. One way to develop an economic vision is to think in terms of values, those things that we hold dear, and then later to think in terms of institutions. And I'll do it that way. It's about the fastest way that I can think of to get through the topic, and I think it's also very helpful. So the notion here is, what do we value that bears upon the economy? So for example, an economy affects how much say over decisions people have. Clearly, an economy impacts that. Our current economy is such that over most economic decisions, people like us, have zero say, and in fact, we don't even know what the decisions are. We're just completely in the dark. In workplaces, most workers have zero influence over outcomes. They just don't have any say. So an economy certainly affects how much say we have, and we need to know, well, how much say should we have? What's our value for that? Now, I'm going to try something in here, even though you're probably worn out from today, and that's that I'm going to ask questions and expect you to give me answers. And I'm a real taskmaster. So what we're going to do is we're going to develop an economic vision right now ourselves here by answering bunches of questions and moving toward an economic vision. The questions are not hard. Don't feel intimidated by them, but you have to think a little out of the box every now and then to get the right answer. If there's an economist in the audience, you're in deep trouble. You're going to have a hard time answering the questions because you've spent your whole life learning how not to think about these things correctly. The more education you have, the more difficulty you're going to have for the same reason. The faculty in the place might be in a little bit of trouble. So we'll see. So what's our value for how much influence people should have over decisions? What is it that we value for that? What's the first obvious word that comes to mind here in France or in the United States? What's our, what is it that we think should be the appropriate solution or value vis-a-vis decision making? Anybody?
Liberty.
Liberty? No. Freedom is a possible answer, yeah, but hello? The obvious answer is what we all call the political system in these societies. Democracy. Okay, so the obvious answer is democracy, which means what? This is another problem with giving an answer. What does it mean?
Being able to speak up.
Certainly it does not mean that. Now I'm going to be hard on you folks, right? We use these words all the time. Democracy does not mean being able to speak up. That would be free speech. What does democracy mean? Self-government? Ruled by the people? Much more specific than that. That is not, no. What is democracy? Huh? Well, democracy is each person gets 37 votes, and we tally by, what's democracy? Majority rules. One person, one vote, majority rules. That's basically what democracy means, okay? And that's what a great many people would say is our value for the influence we should have over decisions. Let's test that. Let's make believe this is a workplace, okay? So this is the perfect test. You're working in the workplace and you want to bring a picture of your parents and put it on the wall in your cubicle, right? So, yeah. So this is the workplace. We each have a little cubicle in the workplace. In yours, you want to put a picture of your parents, okay? Who should make that decision? Shh. There'll be no screaming out. Who should make that decision? You should, right? Just you. Yeah, like Stalin. Like Stalin, just you. A dictatorial decision. The answer is yes, right? Yes, sometimes a decision should be made by one person with full authority, like Stalin. Other times, maybe not every step of the way. Put it down. You're my host. What? I'm not finished. Give me a break. Hold on. Okay. Yeah. Next question. She wants me to say you're going to bring a porn picture, but they don't want me to say that. So you want to bring a boombox. You know what a boombox is? Does everybody know? Like a portable stereo system. Right? So that you can play. And now I apologize for this, and it isn't true. You like heavy metal music. Okay? So you're going to bring the boombox in, and you want to put it on your desk and play heavy metal music. Now who should decide? You see that person all the way back there? He works in the next building, and he can't hear it no matter how loud you play it. Should he have a say? No. So all the people who can hear it and are affected by it. Okay, so now instead of spending 10 years in a philosophy trying to figure out what our value is for decision making, we're done. Our value is called self-management, and what it is we should have a say in decisions in proportion to the degree we're affected by them. Right? And that's what we gravitate toward. That's a natural outcome, and it's one that you can implement for everybody. Notice, that doesn't mean you get to do whatever you want. Because if you get to do whatever you want, you can do something that's going to prevent others from doing whatever they want. Rather, we all get a say in decisions proportionate to the effect on us. That's consistently implementable. Second value, not very complicated. We won't waste long on it. It's we will. I'm in France. The relationship among people, right, is affected by the economy, right? Relations among people is certainly dramatically affected by an economy. In a market economy, basically, the catchphrase is nice guys finish last, okay? So in other words, in a capitalist economy, for the buyer to get ahead, the seller loses. For the seller to get ahead, the buyer loses. It's anti-sociality is produced. What's our value for relations among people?
Competition.
That's the value that you want to have in a good society?
That's the one that we have.
No, I'm asking what our value, we're creating an economy. What our value is for a good economy for relations among people. And you're in France. Solidarity. Okay, and we won't waste a lot of time on this, except to say what it means. What it means is we're saying we want economic institutions that accomplish production, consumption, and allocation, along with doing that, to literally produce solidarity, to literally cause it to be the case that the natural operations inside the institution generate self-management. Okay, that's what we mean by an economy relating well to these values. An economy which destroys solidarity and destroys self-management is obviously contrary to what we value. All right. Next value, an economy affects the range of options that are at our disposal, right? The range of choices that we have. And what's our value for that? Diversity. We're just on such a roll now. Okay, so diversity is our value for that. And if the economy homogenizes, as typical society does, it's contrary to our values. The reason we're whipping through solidarity and diversity is because nobody in here knows anybody, I don't believe, who would say, other things equal, I would like an economy which makes us antisocial or which homogenizes everything. These are not very controversial values. Self-management we'll come back to in a second, because it is. All right, let's do that right now. Margaret Thatcher is with us tonight. She's sitting in the corner back there. She, of course, believes no alternative. There is no alternative, so she thinks I'm a lunatic. I'm wasting your time and my time, and at every opportunity, she's going to explain why what I'm saying is idiocy. So Thatcher thinks self-management is crazy, right? Why does she think self-management is crazy? Self-management, remember, is that people have an influence over decisions in proportion to the degree they're affected by them. So why does Thatcher think that's absolutely ridiculous?
Because we're lazy and greedy.
She may think that, but no. Why does she think that having self-management would be disastrous for our economy? We don't know what we're doing. What Thatcher would say is, some people are really good at making decisions. Most everybody is terrible at making decisions. The experts have to make the decisions. Okay, the first thing to notice is that that's an argument also against democracy. If Castro's the best decision maker, it's an argument for dictatorship. But we'll ignore that. The idea here is that expertise matters. Let's make believe in our workplace we're going to paint the walls. Okay? There's 4 cans of paint on the desk, and we have to choose among them. And they're 4 different colors, but this can of paint has lead in it, okay? And you're a chemist, and it's 40 years ago. And you're the only one in the room that knows that lead paint is deadly. You're the only one. So Thatcher says, if we do self-management, we'll kill ourselves because we'll all pick the blue paint because it's pretty instead of the green. No, we'll all pick the green paint, which has lead in it, and we'll suffer, right? What's the answer to that claim? What do we have to do? Do we have to let him make the decision? We have to be informed. So the answer to Thatcher, trivially simply, don't worry, it's going to get a little more challenging. Trivially simply is that we have to take advantage of expertise. She's right. We have to take advantage of expertise by having mechanisms that distribute knowledge usefully for people to be able to make self-managed decisions. But there's another answer to Thatcher. I agree with her about expertise, okay? So, who is the foremost expert in the world? The foremost expert in the entire world regarding your preferences. Who is?
Who knows what you want?
Who you want? Yeah, right. Who knows your preferences better than anybody else in the whole world? You do. Right. In the United States, when I ask that question to student audiences, I often get the reply, my mother. I do. It puts me in a little trouble. Because, yes, all right, nothing I say tonight will be anything but the total truth. It puts me in a little trouble. You know, how do I annihilate that and not hurt the person, right? Okay, so in any case, you do. And so Thatcher says we should pay attention to expertise. She's correct, right? When it gets to be time to tally preferences, we have to pay attention to expertise, which means we have to pay attention to each person because they are the expert. When it's time to figure out about lead paint, we have to pay attention to the chemist. Okay. Now, the next thing that an economy affects is the distribution of stuff. So an economy produces tons of stuff, all different kinds of things, but think of it as a gigantic pie. What we're talking about now is income. That means we're talking about how big of a slice do you get, right? What's your share of the social product of the pie? And the question becomes, what is our norm for determining what size slice you should get, right? And the first norm that economists tell us is possible is that you should get income based upon the productivity of property that you own. Okay, that allows Bill Gates to be worth more than the population of, you know, Haiti and Nicaragua and Dominican Republic combined. So I'm going to assume that everybody in here would say that's ridiculous. We don't want that as a value, so we throw that out. The second norm is pretty interesting. This is a norm that graduates of the Harvard Business School or Oxford or Cambridge try to figure out how to do and basically support and rationalize. It's also a norm that, how many of you know who Al Capone was? Yeah, Al Capone? He was an American gangster in the 20s and 30s, right? A grotesque killer thief. And Al Capone was once interviewed in a major American journal. And the interviewer said, probably not quite like this, Al, what do you think of the United States? And Al said, I love America. I love the United States. Because in the United States, you get to keep what you can take, right? And that's the second norm, bargaining power, right? And the bargaining power can be due to your stronger union, but it could also be due to the fact that you're male in a sexist society. It could be due to the fact that you're white in a racist society where white supremacy is the norm. It could be due to the fact that you have a monopoly. It could be due to all sorts of things, even that you have a gun and you're robbing somebody, Al Capone. But basically, it's bargaining power. And I'm going to assume that we don't want a thug's economy as the economy that we're going to design, so we're going to throw that one away. The next norm is a socialist norm. Many, many socialists like this norm. And this norm goes like this. Suppose we are for some reason I often use a bicycle factory, so we're a bicycle factory that we're going to talk about. So we're a bicycle factory, and in this bicycle factory, you work and you produce this much bicycle, okay, by your efforts. You produce this much bicycle. Well, obviously you don't get back bicycles from the social product. You get back food and clothing and shelter. But the norm is you should get back basically what you contribute. I mean, some goes off the top for investment and insurance for everybody. So, but we forget that, and you should get back proportionate to what you contribute, the value that you contribute. And the argument is trivially simple. If you get less than that, right, so you get this, somebody else got some of yours, right? If you get more than that, you got some of somebody else's. So the argument is it's equitable, it's fair for you to get back basically what you contribute by your effort once we deal with various social matters, okay? How many people think that sounds like a pretty fair norm? Hands up. Nobody?
Depends what you define by contribute.
By your labors. No property. It's just by your work. I work in the bicycle factory, and my contribution is this much bikes.
But I can't contribute as much as you because I've got 3 kids and an ill.
No, you'll still contribute as much. You might have more to spend, but you'll contribute as much. Let's not discuss it yet. How many people think it's a reasonably fair norm? There's no socialists in the room?
He has different needs than yours.
But in a second, we'll evaluate. How many people think it's a fair norm? Okay, we got 2 up there. That's it? I've never had an audience in which it wasn't almost everybody. So that's interesting. You're just cautious, you French. Okay. Okay, so I'm not going to trap you too often. Now I can't use my punchline. I'll do it anyway. How many of you, so Michael Jordan, everybody knows who he is? There's a reason, of course you know who he is because he's American. And since we run the rules and stuff ourselves down everybody's throat, I can use American examples with great confidence, even in Turkey, and doesn't matter where I am. Okay, so in any case, everybody knows who Michael Jordan was. Some years ago, he played for the Chicago Bulls, played basketball, earned $20 million a year, right? Yeah, really, $20 million a year. How many people think he earned too much? Hands up. Okay, now the French are just like everybody else, at least in that one. But most places, most people thought that the other norm was a fair norm. And in fact, most socialists think the other norm was a fair norm, okay? But at this point, I get to tell all those people who said that Michael Jordan earned too much that none of you are socialists. Because did Jordan earn the amount he produced, less or more? Now we have to learn a lesson. The fact that you don't like basketball, I assume that's the case, doesn't mean that Michael Jordan produced nothing of value. Because it just so happens that I and a gazillion other people love to watch Michael Jordan play basketball and get fulfillment out of it, right? And that's what counts. And Michael Jordan's contribution to the social pie was way above 20 million. Way above 20 million a year. So who else got some of it? The owners of the Chicago Bulls. Who else? The TV broadcasters, that's it for you. Who else? Nike, right? Okay, so we're on track, but why did they get some of it? Hello? What was the last norm that we had before this one? The one we dumped, huh? Exactly, bargaining power. And the reason why the owner and Nike and the TV stations get a lot is because they've got the power to take it. Michael only had enough power to get $20 million a year. He couldn't take more. There was more to be had, but others got it, right? Okay. So now the problem is, why is this norm not a good norm? Well, this norm rewards lots of different things, right? So in the back with the blue and next to you, the multilingual and the blue, you're both going out into the sugarcane fields tomorrow to cut sugarcane, okay? You are 6'4", 220 pounds, and strong as an ox. You are, 5'4", actually there's no reason to apologize, 5'4", pretty wimpy, and not too strong, okay? So you cut this much, and you cut this much, right? If we remunerate for output, you get this much, and you get this much. Is that what we want to do in a good economy? Okay, but this is a value, right? And so it's not 2 + 2 = 4, true. It's a value. It's what we value, but we don't value it. Okay, the next day, you go out, you have a really good tool for cutting cane, and you have some old piece of junk. So you cut this much, and you cut this much. Do we reward the much greater cutting with the better tool? No. We don't reward luck in the genetic lottery, right? That's the big size. We don't reward luck in the tool lottery. So what do we reward? So now we get to the value. We have solidarity, diversity, and self-management. I want to call this one equity. And this one is, we remunerate, that is, you get income for the duration, how long you work, for the intensity, how hard you work, and for the onerousness of the conditions under which you work, as long as you're doing socially valuable labor. That last thing is very important.
The hedge fund manager would get
Huh?
absolutely nothing.
The what?
The hedge fund manager then would get nothing.
Not nothing, but not much, right. I'm tired. If you interrupt, I'm going to lose it. Okay, so duration, intensity, and onerousness of socially valuable labor, right? So can you get income, can you get income for being the goalie of the best soccer team, football team in France? No, because it's not socially valuable labor. Because you're no good. I have to assume that. I apologize. I cannot get income as shortstop of the Yankees or as a surgeon or for lots of things because I cannot do them to a level that is socially valuable. Okay, so you have to do socially valuable labor and duration, intensity, and onerousness. So now we have 4 values. And I actually think those 4 turn out to be enough. We don't want too long a list. If we have a list of 100 values, it's going to be very hard to think. So you want to get a nice, succinct list that seems to encompass what's necessary to guide the task of figuring out institutions. So we're going to stop with 4, except if there's some Marxists in the room. Anybody got a lot of Marxist background? Okay, there's enough of you, so we're going to add another value, classlessness. And the reason we're going to add this is because I'm going to nail Marx. So we'll add classlessness, and what does it mean? It means we want institutions whose very operation, right, makes us one group, in essence. It does not divide us into groups whose structure, whose characteristics are such that we get ahead at each other's disadvantage, that we are arrayed against each other, right? So we don't want that. So we don't want an economy which creates that kind of class division. And particularly, we don't want class rule. Okay, so we now have 5 values. All right, so now we're a workplace. And we're going to start to figure out the institutions of a good economy. Seemingly an impossible task, which we will finish quickly. And I want you, what we're doing is not abstract. So for instance, if we were all friends, maybe we'd be forming a co-op. And the exact questions we're going to ask confront a co-op. In Argentina, some years ago, the economy was a mess. And in about 400 factories, the owners decided, I've had it, I'm not making enough, I want to sell. And the workers decided, no, you're not going to sell. And the owners decided, yes, I am. And the workers decided, no, you're not, and they took the factory. Okay? So the workers in about 400 factories took over the factories in Argentina.
They didn't buy them.
No, they didn't buy them at all. But they also didn't rise up against owners per se, right? In other words, there were owners who wanted to sell. And those were the factories that were taken over in order to prevent the workers from losing their job. Also, when the owners, just for future reference, we'll need this shortly, when the owners left, so did the accountants and the managers and the engineers and a whole array of people of that sort, which we're going to figure out what that sort is pretty soon. Okay, they left also. Okay, now back to us. We want self-management, which means, is there anybody here who's not going to be involved in at least a reasonable number of the decisions? Remember the norm. You're involved in decisions in proportion to the degree you're affected. So obviously, we're all going to be affected by lots of decisions in our workplace. So we need a venue where we can all participate. That's called a workers' council, right? But then, you know, the 4 of you might be a work team, and every once in a while, actually fairly often, the 4 of you will confront a decision, an option, and within the rubric of the overarching options, the 4 of you will make the decision. So the institution is trivial. It's workers' self-managed council. And we also need one on the consumption side, although we're not going to have time probably to talk about that. So we want a workers' self-managed council as our first institution. Not very controversial. All those 400 factories set them up, right? There's nothing very original there. And most co-ops set them up. That is, they have a room where everybody meets together and, you know, engages in. Usually it's democratic. But after a while, people begin to discover that self-management makes more sense. For instance, it turns out that if the temperature in this room goes below 75 degrees, you'll die. and we're trying to decide what to keep the thermostat at, right? Clearly he gets more votes, right, than the rest of us. That's self-management, because he's way more affected, right? We might want to have an air-conditioned room for him, or a heated room for him, but nonetheless, he's got a lot to say, you see? All right, so we have a worker self-managed council in our workplace. Now we do, and that means sometimes, a lot of times, the decisions are democracy. One person, one vote, majority rule. But sometimes they are consensus. And sometimes they are, you need 2/3. And sometimes they involve long deliberation and sometimes short deliberation. The idea is those are all tactics for attaining self-management, which is the principle. Actually, there was a question earlier today that unless I heard wrong and got the translation wrong, somebody asked what the difference was between consensus and democratic centralism. A lot of people might have thought, well, now there is a weirdo question from one extreme to the other. But it's actually a rather interesting question for whoever asked it, I think, for this reason. Democratic centralism, this is going to remind me about this when we get to IOPS, because it'll come up then. Okay, so equitable remuneration, we remunerate for duration, intensity, and onerousness of socially valued labor. Now, in all those 400 factories in Venezuela, in Argentina, they equalized income of everybody. Right? So that's what you do first, and then after a while you realize you want to work extra because you want to get a new something or other, so you want to work a little longer, and they realize that's fair, right? That's fair, and you don't care about extra stuff, you care about leisure, you want to work a little less. People realize that was fair, less work, less income. So it moves towards our norm of equitable. Starts out equal, moves towards our norm of equitable. Okay. So we've got this now, and suppose we keep the corporate division of labor, right? So we keep the old division of labor. Well, the first question is, what is the old division of labor? So what is the division of labor that characterizes corporations as we know them in our societies, yours and mine, and for that matter, the old Soviet Union too? What's the division of labor? How do you describe it? That's not a division of labor, but that is absolutely true. You work harder, you work under worse conditions, and you work longer, and typically you get less income. The reason is because power affected your income, and it also affected those other things. Because you had no power, you got stuck on both ends, right? Okay. You were going to say? What? What do you say? Vertical. Sort of like a fireman's pole? That's not, in other words, okay, but that just tells us that it's a hierarchy. Okay, so we all know that, but that doesn't tell us what the critical factor is in the definition of that hierarchy, in the nature of that hierarchy. Is it all the people who have long hair at the top and the short hair at the bottom? No. So then what's going on? People, well, yeah, we know that that's part of it. Who else is up there? Managers? The owner's gone. We've already got rid of the owner. Remember we got rid of earning income from property? Owner's gone. Owner was gone in Argentina, and owner is gone in our co-op. We don't have to worry about owners. If any of you are owners, your life just changed. So, what did you say? All right. So, manager, who else? Well, what's an expert in a workplace? The accountant, the engineer, etc. Okay, now, if you had to say one thing, this is maybe the only hard, if you had to say one thing that characterizes the difference between those folks and another set of folks, who I'm going to call the working class, right? 80%, what is it? What? Yeah, except, how about doctors and lawyers? Are they up here? As compared to down here? Well, they are. Okay, so doctors and lawyers are up here. Huh? Education, but education is something outside the economy, and we're going to see why it is what it is. What is it inside the economy? What are we talking about? Hello? The division of labor. So what's the feature of the division of labor? Intellectual versus, okay, but just being intellectual doesn't do much for you. It's something else. It's that some people have, we're now getting there. Some people have a set of tasks that are empowering. They have a monopoly on the empowering tasks, and so their jobs are empowering. And other people are left with tasks that are literally disempowering. Now, what does that mean? It means that the people who have the empowering work have situations in their position in the economy, in the division of labor, that give them confidence, that give them social connections, that give them social skills, verbal skills, that give them knowledge of what's going on in the workplace, and that give them daily practice with decision making. And the other set of people, 80% roughly, have positions that exhaust them, that in fact diminish their knowledge, fragment them, reduce their confidence, disconnect them, et cetera, et cetera. So we have disempowering, empowering. Now let's go back to our little workplace. We have the Workers' Council, and we have equitable remuneration, but we kept the old division of labor. So at the outset, we're what? We're all earning the same, right? Or maybe some are earning more because of we're being equitable as compared to just the same. But these, from here over, have all the empowering tasks, okay? So you guys, 2, 4, 6 of you, have all the empowering tasks, and the rest have the disempowering tasks. So we come together in the Workers' Council. Who sets the agenda? They do. Who does all the talking? Who's bored? Okay. And so what happens over time is bored and alienated, excited and woo, and slowly but surely absent, right? Because you're exhausted and you just want to get home, present. And at that point, now put yourself in the role, what do you guys decide? What do you decide? And? Yeah. So you for who? I got to get that last thing in there. For who? For who? Baloney. For you, right? So it's better pay and better conditions for you because you got to get it from them, right? So you're getting it from them. So less pay for you, right? Because there's only so much pay. So less for you, more for them. Okay, now I want to say this is a class distinction, right? I want to call them the coordinator class, right? Now somebody might disagree with that, but I'm saying that there's an economic structure which creates, and now I want to tell you a little story. I'm in Argentina, and I'm in a room with 50 individuals. Each one of them is a representative, it wasn't exactly 50, but roughly 50. Each one of them is a representative from one of those occupied factories, okay? And so before the meeting starts, I'm supposed to talk to the group. And before the meeting starts, everybody's sort of energetic and excited because, after all, they're in a room with people like themselves who occupied factories who they don't know. So they're getting to schmooze and so on and so forth. The schmooze, that's not a French word. Jabber, if that's what you want me to say. Schmooze is a little more, nice. Okay, so in any case, the meeting starts, and we start going around the room. And the first person talks, and the second person. By the time we get to the third person, that nice, light, happy air has diminished, and it's pretty calm. By the fifth person, it's pretty deadly. And by the seventh person, there are a lot of people in the room crying. Now again, this is, I don't make things up. This has happened, okay? And the seventh person says, I never thought I would say anything like this. I can't imagine that I would say this, but maybe Margaret Thatcher was right. And the reason, he then explains, is, he says, we took over our workplace, the fucking owner was gone, the other folks left, we immediately instituted democracy, we immediately instituted equal wages. Over time, we even became a little more sophisticated, and allowed for some variation that was equitable, realized that there had to be some self-management. It couldn't just be everything was one person, one vote. And now all the old crap is coming back. That's what the person said. It's getting alienated again. It's just tedious again. And the income differentials are coming back. And I just think maybe she was right. It's just the way it is. It's who we are. We have already discovered what the reason for this was, right? The reason for this was that these 6, indistinguishable from anybody else in the room, because at the outset, we were all just workers, right? Before this factory was taken over in Argentina, we were all rote workers. But these 6 took the responsibility, or were pegged for the responsibility, or randomly were chosen for the responsibility and got the empowering work, right? And then over time, all the old crap came back. You were alienated, you were not, your salaries went up, yours went down, your conditions went up, so you see what happened. So that was the explanation. What's the solution? Circulating them. In the US, the word is rotate, and that's always the first thing anybody says. Rotating the task. Perfectly reasonable, except, well, let's do it this way. So, do you use the word ghetto in France? Okay. So imagine ghetto, not, what do you call a nice neighborhood? A wealthy neighborhood. Okay, so wealthy neighborhood, ghetto. We're going to solve the problem. We'll rotate every so often. So a couple of days a month, the people in the ghetto will go to the nice neighborhood, the people in the nice neighborhood will go to the ghetto. Is it going to solve the problem? What's going to happen, if anything? What? Well, I'll tell you what I would do. If I leveled over here in the ghetto, we're going to have some redistribution of wealth. Because when I go over here, I'm going home with some stuff. But it's not going to solve the problem, because I still live in the ghetto and they still live in the rich neighborhood. So rotating doesn't really do it. What does? Change the division of labor. How? But it's not just rotating, because we just saw if you're just slumming, in other words, if it's, what do you have to do?
Everybody needs to do a bit of both.
Yeah.
Before they became rich, you have to do it before.
Huh?
You have to rotate before they.
Before they take power.
Before the ghetto gets eaten.
Okay, but in any case, what you have to wind up with is what?
Distributing the power.
Yeah, you have to redistribute the empowering work, because it's the empowering work that's the issue here, right? It's the empowering work that conveys the power that causes them to, it also causes them to view themselves weirdly. So after they lower the wages over here and raise them over here, the next morning they get up and they look in the mirror, right? So you look in the mirror. Do you say to yourself, oh man, I'm a smart ass. I stole the empowering work, I waited them out, and now I've stolen their income, and I've stolen the good conditions. Aren't I smart? Do you say that to yourself? Or do you say to yourself, boy, am I smart and responsible. I deserve it. It's the appropriate thing to do for the well-being of all humanity. You say the latter. And here's a real, which I don't want to argue about. It's much worse. These folks, and there's probably some in the room. It doesn't make you the bottom of the earth, right? But many people who are on this side of this divide, who are in the coordinator class, actually think they're doing the working class a favor when they lower the working class's income. I mean, how could that be, right? That just seems ridiculous. But I believe it's true. And the reason they think it is the same reason, we're back to the family. I come to you and I say, does she get an allowance?
Never.
No, does she?
Occasionally, now and then.
Do you get an allowance?
Sometimes when they don't forget.
Okay, so let's say your allowance was, what's a reasonable allowance nowadays? I don't know.
Oh, a couple of dollars a week.
Okay, so your allowance was 10 euros a week. So let's say your allowance was 10 euros a week, and I come to you and I say, that's ridiculous. And let's say you're really wealthy. Okay, We're in Never Never Land now. So you're really wealthy, and I say to you, you should give her 500 euros a week. And you go off and think about it. And you think to yourself, that's ridiculous. If we give her 500 euros a week, she's too young to appreciate it. It will be a tremendous strain on her trying to figure out what to do with it. After she's done it, she'll feel guilty about it. So we don't want to do that. And that's the way the coordinator class views the working class. Very paternalistically, right? And because that's the role, right? Okay, back to where the hell was I?